Okay. Let's see. All right, we are live. Meeting is now live.
Yes.
All right. Well, hello everybody. Tonight we're talking with Dr. Chris Motley. He's probably one of my favorite doctors out there. This is not a lie. I'm not pumping him up. This is the truth. He's a mentor of mine. He is truly an amazing healer. He knows more about all things than most people know about one thing when it comes to healing, whether that
Oh,
be acupuncture, kinesiology, parasites, Lyme. So listen up. We're talking parasites tonight. With all that other stuff is going to filter in here. There's no way we can keep it out. I'm just so thankful to have him on here. So, Dr. Chris, is there anything you want to say?
first of all, thank you, Jaban. Dr. Moore, I've known him for a few years now, and I remember when I first had talked to both of our mentors that runs in the realm of kinesiology and acupuncture, natural health, and they said that there were a couple of young stars coming up through the ranks, and they said, "Have you met Jaban?" And I said I hadn't met Jaban yet, but then we met each other at a seminar, and I knew why, because I saw him working on individuals, and he was finding out things quicker than I could find out things. And you think, you know what? You don't feel like an old dog, like you can't be used anymore. I'm just thankful that there are new people out there that can find things faster, heal things quicker. So very impressed with Jaban, and we're buddies, and I really appreciate the privilege, my friend. And I'm so proud of you. And not that you need my approval at all, but just you have done well, and you are rocking and rolling in Kansas City. So thank you for allowing me to have the privilege, brother. Thank you.
Well, I appreciate that. And for all of you who don't know, he is in Nashville. His clinic is in Nashville, one of my favorite places to go visit. That city has a lot of country music, which I love to listen to. But we're talking parasites tonight. So let's just
Yes.
jump in.
Yes.
Okay, so parasites. This is something so many people don't even think about as being a problem. How common are they in humans?
They're very common, and to the point where most individuals, not just clinically, when patients come in, I could estimate that mostly 80%, maybe 85% of my patients that come in show indications of symptoms of parasites. Even if you read the CDC reports would say that, let's say malaria being a common parasite given off by mosquitoes, they say that, oh, only people, in Africa or South America get mosquitoes. But even through CDC percentages, they say that almost 228 million people around the world have malaria worldwide annually, and that's through the US. So when individuals come in and they are surprised that they have parasites because they believe, oh, I have huge worms that are existing in my body and nobody gets parasites. But you and I, Jamin, have talked to many patients, especially individuals that live out in the country, where they will tell you things such as, when I was younger living on the farm, my parents would literally give me turpentine or kerosene to help deworm me every year. So when you think about where parasites will come from, we can talk about that later. Most people, and I'm going to say almost everybody, and I think you and I would agree that everybody has parasites. And I'm
Oh,
not trying to sound squeamish or like make anybody feel sick to their stomachs, but there is a symbiosis between parasites and people. However, they can overrun us. Yeah.
yeah.
So about everybody.
I completely agree. I see parasites on a large majority of my patients, 70, 80, 90%, maybe even 100 if you really
Yeah.
delve deep. But one thing that you did said is about deworming, right? So we deworm our dogs, we deworm our cats, we deworm our livestock.
Yep.
And for some reason, we believe that we are so superior, our immune systems are superior, something that we can't get them. Well, it just doesn't make sense. We swim in ponds, we walk on grass, we eat food. If you like sushi, things like that, right? We're going to jump into some of these fun foods. So, where do parasites come from, right?
Oh, where do they come from? And brother, you know as well as I do, many individuals go, well, I don't eat anything like bad or raw fish or eat sushi. But most individuals don't know that a majority of the parasites come from fruits and vegetables. If you study the lifespan of a lot of parasites, yes, they get in the ground, they can go through the feet, through the soft tissue, but many times they're in the fruits and vegetables. Further, I had a patient come in the other day, and he washes his vegetables, right, man? Puts in the apple cider vinegar, and some people put it in different types of washes. And he sent a picture to me, and he goes, man, is this what I think it is? And it shows that he has a strawberry, and there's a worm. I'm not kidding, about 4 inches long that was in it. I got another story, guys. This is crazy. So he said that, can they be in fruits? I'm like, of course. Parasites, bacteria, even certain types of mold and fungus, of course, have metabolisms like we do. They feed off sugar. They feed off carbs. Where are they going to go? And they will go to sugars. They will go to fructose. They will find fruits and vegetables. We eat raw vegetables. And even further, there's even larvae, different types of parasitic larvae that live off of some of the mineral-rich greens that people have. So make sure you wash and soak your vegetables, because you can get a lot of parasites to that. So please don't think I'm talking negative of vegetables and fruits. That's one main area that we can get them from. And another big source we know is dairy. Dairy has a lot of parasites within cows. So like you said, some individuals think if a cow's eating off the ground and can get parasites and we have to deworm them, there's no way a parasite can get into the dairy or to the udders and get into the milk. Very much so. It can get into dairy. It can get into the tissue, like especially like if you're eating elk or deer, beef, pork. Guys, they insist. They all have different life cycles. And have you ever had it, brother, when you check somebody and they'll be clear on parasites, and then 3 weeks later, 4 weeks later, I get an indicator, the symptoms that parasites come back. And then I study it further and I'll find out that parasites have different lifespans. Like they'll actually go into a larvae stage, they'll go into an egg stage, and they have different types of formats to actually how they go into the lungs, then they get coughed up and they get swallowed down into the gut. So they actually use different pH, different environments to actually accentuate their life cycles. So when we find all these sources of parasites, I don't want people to sound scared, but they wonder where they come from. Like, they can come from a lot of different places. The soil, your food, other people, food sources like meats, dairy, you name it. They say, I just read an article, it was about 5 years ago by Scientific American. They said the nematodes rule the world. We think we rule the world, but the nematodes, the roundworms, do. As corny as that sounds.
This is true. I battle with nematodes with clients all the time, and they're the boogers to get rid of. That's for sure.
They're the worst, man. They are the worst. Definitely.
One thing you said about that being on food, right? And our food comes from around the world these days. So I like to point out to people that most of the lab tests that we're doing only test locally. They test for things that are in our general environment. Yet we're getting food from every environment in the world. And you wonder why you never get a positive test. And then you just brought up also that, life cycles, right? So if your stool is where you're looking, that's the only place you're looking, but they're in your lungs or your liver or who knows where else, brain, then how in the world are you going to trust a stool sample to be all inclusive?
That is the truth. I mean, many times you and I would see that a patient would come and go get a parasitic test for like their stool, and they'll say, well, it's negative. And we get indications through kinesiology or acupuncture type testing that says, no, there has to be some form of like strongyloides or some kind of worm that's in the tissue. And many times, guys, that parasites, namely even some that are related to Lyme disease, they love the tissues, like they love the joints. So they will do like a PCR test, which will actually test the synovial fluid within the joints to see if there's parasites in there. So we're not trying to sound overwhelming to you when we're talking about, it may not be in your stool, but it definitely can get into the muscle tissue and into the joints, because the joints are made of glucosamine, glucose with amino acids. They love sugar. They love proteins, undigested proteins. They'll go into your muscles and they'll eat up a lot of your B vitamins and try to get to your iron. So many times patients, we've seen it, where they're tough buggers, you said, to kill off. We're like, how in the world? Like, but they dig in, they get into certain tissue. They may not get into the colon, but they're around the colon, and they can give us pretty bad problems because of the toxins they produce as well.
Yeah. So I just want to point one thing out to so many people. They're not just in the gut, right?
No, not at all. They're not just there. And many times, like you just said, the brain, many times have you and I found that people come in and they say, Doc, I have severe brain fog. I cannot get this. I got itching ears. I got itchy eyes, and we'll find out parasitic type signals that are coming around the ears and eyes. And to me, I think it's very common knowledge to think that if a parasite can travel through the colon or through the lumen of your colon, it has the ability to actually travel through the tissue and get into certain sinuses. Further point, you told me about the cold dark microscopy that you can actually look at somebody's blood. So guys, I went and got mine done, and I had mine, and I looked at the screen and I saw little squiggly worms growing through my blood, and I went, what in the world? What is that? And the lady looked at me and said, oh, don't worry, you're pretty good. You're probably one of the lightest ones. And I thought I had them all over. And she goes, there's people that have them running all through their blood. It's crazy. They can travel fast. If they have a tail on them, they can move quickly. They'll jump into your bloodstream like a subway system, but then get in the tissue. They'll find the quickest way to find all the nutrients they can, whether it's the brain, which has tons of nutrients, lots of fats and undigested proteins. Yes, definitely. They can be anywhere.
I love looking at the studies, even on PubMed, that show that nematodes are in a high majority of people that have MS when they check autopsies at the end. So if you're curious, guys, jump on PubMed, start Googling parasites in people, and you're going to start finding all kinds of fun things.
Oh, and if you do, don't get scared. We're talking, Dr. Moore and I are talking about things that are interesting, because a lot of times we could see people that would say, I will blame a bacterial infection or a virus or yeast. And they come in, I'm like, no, it's literally parasitic activity. And you look on PubMed and you will find all the reports from people who are parasitologists that will show you pictures and such that say, hey, people can get stuff in their brain. And what do parasites produce? They'll produce things like toluenes or phenols or organic compounds that actually will do what? Create an inflammatory response in your brain, so you get complete brain fog. So when Dr. Moore and I are checking somebody and we go, you have tons of ammonia in your system, or you have tons of phenolic compounds, you can go get an organic acid test. And I've missed them, guys. Honestly, I've looked at some people and said, well, it's not in your stool sample and I can't find it here or there. So I just sort of like, well, I guess we'll go to the next thing. Then they go to a urine sample test, like an organic acid test, and they'll show some of the compounds that parasites give off. I'm like, they are hiding somewhere. So check it out. It's not to be scary. We're just telling this for you guys to know that if you're having symptoms and you don't know where they're coming from, not getting it from your stool samples, there's other explanations for parasites, and they can give you quite a bit of symptoms.
Yeah. So if you ever wonder why I like tests, why Dr. Motley likes tests, why we don't just do muscle testing or acupuncture or these other things, why we run all these tests too, and then take a symptom assessments on top of it, is because no format of care is perfect.
No. And I think it's really great. Dr. Moore was just telling me that how he has nurse practitioners and he works with other docs. I work with a good medical doctor here in town. And many times whenever I see the symptoms of parasitic activity, which would people say, what are the symptoms? Always hungry, not gaining weight, losing weight, individuals that have brain fog or have severe digestive bloating issues where they feel like, I feel like I'm full of gas, especially after I eat, because they get very active after you eat because they're going to go eat the food you just ate. Mm-hmm. And when I can't find something productive through my testing, I let him send my friend Dr. Neff. I said, hey, doc, can you do some extra testing, finding some things through the urine, like an organic acid test, maybe do extra stool sample testing. And I'm so thankful that if you have a conglomerate of people that can actually look at one person, I don't try to just depend on Eastern medicine or kinesiology or chiropractic. I try to depend on everything. If I can get any way to get a patient better quicker, that's the route I want to go.
Yeah, I love that. Dr. Yini, which I believe you took a couple classes from at one point.
Yeah.
He said something in his class, and he was a world-renowned acupuncturist, chiropractor. He said, if you told me this stick, if I would shake it around somebody dancing around their head and it would get them well, and it worked, I would do it every single time. All that matters is get somebody better. So that's the goal. Obviously, we don't hurt anybody in the process. That's just about getting people better at whatever, however we have to do that, working with whoever needs to be worked with. But all right, so back to parasites a little bit, right? Like, what habits do we have in our life that lead to more parasitic infections?
Well, I think we could both agree on that. I'm talking to myself. It's basically eating habits are the number one thing that I say that we'd have to say are the habits that can contribute to the growth. Yes, the environment, we can talk about emotions as well. I think that the foods that we eat, especially high carb, simple carb diet, the standard American diet, usually is a fertile ground for the infections to grow. Again, parasites live off a high sugar, high glucose environment because it runs their environment, or runs their metabolism. And some can live in an anaerobic state without a lot of oxygen. So that can create acidity. So when you think about when I was younger, this is me speaking on me, guys. I used to eat Pop-Tarts like all the time. I drank Mountain Dew. I ate the Bugle chips. Remember those, guys? I ate those all day. And I thought, goodness, if you added layers upon layer upon that, and I always had chronic strep throat. I know I did, and I had yeast issues. And then you have an environment where all you're doing is drinking less water, more sugar, and then you think your gut's going to digest proteins like, the meats and the beef you eat. I'm like, not at all. You probably have undigested proteins that are floating around in your butt. And what do parasites love? Sugars, undigested proteins. And Dr. Moore and I know that, and you guys probably research it too, because you're tuning in going, yeah, they love to eat that stuff, and they travel anywhere it's going to happen. So you'll see that individuals will come into the office and they'll have this area of upper digestive issues. They'll have liver issues, weak spleen, weak stomach. So guys, the parasites get in there, they love your food, and then they run and hide. So you'll have in times where you go, well, I feel pretty good right now and I feel all right. Then around 11 p.m. to 1 a.m., 3 a.m., you go, man, I woke up last night and I couldn't go to sleep. I couldn't get up. I'm like, why? During that time in Chinese medicine, that's when your liver and gallbladder are the most active. That's when they're supposed to heal. That's when all the electricity is traveling to those organs to basically energize them. And when they do, they say, there's a block here. There's some critters running around here. And so you start to see the symptomatology of these patients come in, and you think, what happened? What did I eat? And I go, what'd you eat the day before? And it's no blame to them, because you'll find out they may have high amounts of dairy, high amounts of cereals, lots of colas. And they think, well, I drank a Gatorade. And I said, Gatorade still have that in there too. And anything that has any type of compound that could be like an oil type compound, almost like a gasoline, you find those kind of dyes like yellow 5 and red dye. Those things will feed parasites as well. So we're not trying to bash anybody. We're not trying to say that. I'm like, those are things that make fertile ground. So then we think this, and I'm not trying to take too much of time. We think about the environments that we're in. Why do we eat so much sugar? Because we're stressed. And we'll eat a lot of stress to keep us going. So if you have high stress, what does that do to the brain centers? It triggers your thyroid to turn on your cortisol levels and your adrenals. And so your stomach and your gallbladder start to contract and get weak. It's in Chinese medicine. When those organs get weak, what do they do? Decrease the function of the hydrochloric pumps, all the pumps that should be going in there, and the enzymes to go eat up your food. So you have a double whammy. So number one, I always tell my patients, just cut back on the sugary foods. Let's look at the diet. Don't get too high on the carbs.
I love it. And you connected the dots for everybody out there wondering what's happening to them. So eat a little better. That will help you. I mean, one other thing that comes to mind for me when this sort of question's asked is look at especially the American diet. What do we put on everything? Sugar, carbs, like that. We pour it on literally everything. My dad puts sugar on strawberries. I'm like, they're already sweet. They don't need any help. But you go to other cultures, you look at Italy. For years, it was oregano, which is antiparasitic. If you get natural, high quality oregano, it's antiparasitic. Or wasabi. You go to Asian cultures, you put a wasabi on all kinds of stuff.
And they would eat the ginger and the wasabi with their sushi because they know it contains parasites. If they do, and it'll kill it. Like my mom is Korean and she has some Chinese background as well, but she will eat crushed red pepper and ginger with almost everything. And she goes, why? She literally, guys, will wash her meat. Like she'll put beef and soak it. She goes, why? It pulls out all the blood. And so she'll soak meat for a while in water and then she'll go and cook it. And she just says, no blood smell. That's what she said. No blood smell. She goes, because in her culture, she says too much blood causes cancer, because they say like too much dirty blood will cause that. So they get all the parasites out of it. You're right.
All these cultural things that were over years and years and years, these wise tales, these habits that honestly, we look at them now from the outside looking in, I'm like, man, those make so much sense. And then even like, I'm not a big sushi guy. Honestly, let's let everybody laugh. I ate sushi for a girlfriend. And I'm like, it has parasites in it. And this has been in the last few years when I've been in practice. And I'm like, all right, well, I'm gonna do this. I will pack ginger on it just because for me, it tastes good.
Yeah.
But I'm like, it also makes sense because there's just like that innate intelligence in our body that says, okay, this raw fish, where I guarantee you, if you took that fish when it was caught and you let it sit around, which I've talked to people in meat delis, those fish, like things come out of them while they're chopping that stuff up.
Woo.
Yeah.
Woo. Yeah.
It's not something fun to talk about. I've talked to too many butchers and you don't want to ask them what they see.
Oh, like whenever they tell you how much, like they'll see like small eggs or small cysts within the tissue. Mm-hmm. And for as well as I do, like whenever a patient will come in and they're really clear, right, brother, and then they're testing real well, and all of a sudden they'll have parasite bunch in their stomach. I'm like, where in the world did that come from? And we have different test kits that can actually test, like if it's, and we have to validify them through like blood work if we could, and some like stool samples. But many times I'll check with the patient, namely my mom sometimes, and she goes, oh, and they call it apo, means a painful stomach. And I'll check and parasites come because they just gorge themselves on sushi and they just got a bad batch of sushi. And you're like, well, now I have to give them some supplementation. But you and I know that the many times that I've approached parasitic activity with patients, the number one symptom, guys, is when you eat and you have severe bloating right after you eat. Like, that is one of the main things. So yeah, the deli, don't go to the deli and ask them questions though. It'll just freak you out.
So you brought up bloating after a meal. That's not
Yeah.
SIBO?
It could be. And man, you are reading my mind. I've been checking individuals more and more in SIBO because Dr. Moore and I have studied, like, they call it like facial diagnosis in Chinese medicine. And many times you'll find individuals, if they do have small breakouts in the forehead, sometimes the side of the head or in the cheeks. And anytime, my friend, they have it right here, right in that small intestine area. This is small intestine, a bit of large intestine. The large intestine is also down here on the lower cheeks. SIBO, to the point where anybody that has depression or weight gain and they have unexplained, like, mood changes, I do check for parasites, but if I see that, I automatically go to SIBO, and you'll find large amounts of strep coinciding with the parasite, strep, staph, clostridium, even enterococcus. So you'll find a lot of SIBO in there. Yeah.
Well, I was gonna say, I've seen a lot of SIBO, but I feel like people have done all the antibiotic therapies. They've done tons of herbal therapies.
Yeah.
And what I've tended to find, and it's perfect for parasite day, is if you don't clear the parasite, you can't clear the SIBO.
True. A lot of times that layering gets to the point where if I ever have a SIBO patient and they don't get cleared after about 3 visits, like, I'm thinking there's something else going on. I usually have to try to check every parasite I can, every parasite indicator that I can find. And for a while there, I still do this. I will even jump the gun and start clearing either viruses or parasites right off the bat. Just start clearing them because it makes our job so much easier. And you would be surprised, the general public out there, I'm even surprised at how much parasites come out of a person. And I don't know if Jaban has this in our office. You ever seen, like, you talk to the colon therapist, because I have a lot of friends who are colon therapists, and they'll tell me stories about, like, what comes out of a person, to the point where they've had individuals that have had, guys, not exaggerated, almost 10 pounds of waste come out of their body, and parasites intertwined in those things. And you're like, how does a person survive with that much going on? But when you start killing off stuff, and then they feel like the world changed, their brain changed. Have you read the book? Guys, read this book, Your Brain on Parasites. Have you read that book?
I have not read that book, but now
You guys, everybody out there, check it out. It talks about the life cycles of parasites. It's scary, but it's fun too. So anyway, yeah.
well, it's like the book Your Brain on Drugs, but
Oh yeah, it is.
all right. So, we've talked a bit about some of these things, but you said that parasites feed on carbs, they feed on organic fats, but are there other things that they also feed on?
Yeah, quite a bit of trans fats, metals. They'll feed on metals. A lot of types of compounds that are associated with, I said again, like oil compounds or synthetic compounds. There's one theory that some researchers say that when you find a person with parasites, you're usually going to find somebody with high amounts of toxic metal load, like aluminum or mercury or cadmium or nickel. And some researchers say that they'll find that the parasite is actually engulfing or eating the metals from what we get it from our diet. And many times when you find that much metal from somebody who lives in an area where they had pesticides sprayed all over their grains or somewhere they lived, or I have patients that literally live near nuclear power plants, and they have parasites all through them because they have all these metal compounds in the body. So you'll find people that live near areas that have high pesticides, even nuclear areas, people with a lot of EMF, they'll have high amounts of parasites in their body, but they will definitely feed off metals. I find that's one of the biggest things, not excluding food itself. And surprisingly, I've missed things, guys, when I've had patients where I'm like, oh, I know what's going on here, I got this. And then I go through like I was in Hawaii, I have patients in Hawaii, and you're finding all these things with them, parasites heavily. And then I go in and everybody checks for a compound like from Supreme Nutrition called Glypho-X. It's for glyphosate. Everybody checked for it. They needed it because Monsanto is in Hawaii, one of their testing grounds. And I was like, those parasites probably were getting into those metals and trying to help clean the body, but also living off of them. What have you found, man? Like, what do you find, like other things that you find that they feed off of?
Everything you said, because the research has shown that a parasite can carry 6 to 8 times its own body mass.
What? I didn't know. Wow.
Right. So you only have so much body mass. You're talking about all this metal radiation, right? And I know we've talked that, is this symbiotic? Is this helping you? So do we have to make sure to get you away from the toxins before you want to get rid of all of the parasites because they're technically protecting you, even though you feel awful? Are they protecting you from something worse?
No, that's a great question. That's a philosophical question, guys. I think that with all the amount of metals and petroleum-based oils that are in our system, because I read a report that they said that we eat the amount of a plastic credit card every 2 weeks. Like that's the amount of plastics we ingest every 2 weeks on the daily average because of drinking out of bottles. Is it symbiosis, guys? Do the parasites invade our body, or does our body allow them to manifest themselves or stay there symbiotically to eat those things? I would say, do we want to keep those things in there? I'm still like you. Maybe that's how you think. I'm like, if it ain't you, you got to get rid of it. Like, I'm going to just go ahead and start cleaning out the parasites, and hopefully the metals will show itself. Because, guys, we know that the body works in layers. Like even in Chinese medicine or kinesiology, what will happen is there's a quandary that Dr. Moore and I have to go through. If you have high amounts of parasites and we go off and we kill a lot of them, they could release a lot of toxicity that can make you feel a little worse when they come out. On the other hand, the body says, well, I'm willing to get rid of this amount of parasites, so I'll give you this signal. They'll give you the indications. We start cleaning it off, and all of a sudden, something else rises to the surface. The earthquake pulls this other stuff, and the body goes, I have enough energy to take care of this now, so take care of it. So we want to kill off a lot of things really quickly or get rid of them. But then, like, we'll find parasites, clean it up, and all of a sudden metals show up. And then the patient goes, why didn't you find metals? And you go, because it may have been in the parasite, or it may have been under the surface, or your nervous system wasn't allowing me to get to it because it'd make you go into a Herx reaction where you'd feel worse. So that's why when we send somebody off to get some kind of testing like metal testing, or if we get neurotransmitter testing, see how it affects the body, at least it gives us the indication of what's lying there. But we may not attack it or get to it right off the bat because the patient still has to get up in the next morning and work. That's the problem we have, isn't it, bro? Like, you give them something, you're like, they go, oh, I felt horrible. Like I got hit by a Mack truck. And we're like, I promise you, healing crisis, it's going to get better. But that is, do they live symbiotically? I'm like, yeah, they can. But I'm with you. I'm like, just let's start flushing them. They don't need to be there.
Yeah, the thing that I've come to the conclusion of, we're never going to eradicate all parasites, Lyme, Bart, viruses. They are going to live symbiotically with us at some level, but it's at a much, much lower level than pretty well everyone that I work with. If you have a bunch of symptoms, it's not symbiosis truly. It might be protecting you somehow, some way, but that also just means that something else is wrong that we've got to work on. So as I start working with parasites, the parasites is the first thing I start with you on. I'm like, hey, okay, so we're going to start addressing this. Mm-hmm. And if in between our appointments, whether that be 2 weeks or 4 weeks, or that's usually how long it goes in between it early on. Mm-hmm. If you start having X, Y, or Z, like metallic taste in your mouth, that means that we're probably killing parasites and they're releasing metals. And now we need to mop those up.
Yeah.
So I'll say, grab some HMET binder, which is a heavy metal binder that I really like. That'll mop up that metal. And it's not something I started you on, but if this, or this, start over here. If you start getting a bitter taste in your mouth, you might be releasing some mold. If you're getting that internal vibration, you might be releasing some radiation. So 1, let us know that. 2, here's the binders you might need for X, Y, or Z. It may not happen for 6 months, but just so you know, so it's not a surprise, here you go. Here's a list of possibilities.
Dude, that is fantastic. I didn't know about the bitter mold, but I love the way that you put that, the 6 months that here's the possibilities. I think any individual out there that is going through getting parasite, or they suspect, or they know they have parasites, our heart goes out to you, because 6 months, we can expect sometimes 6 months, even a year. I've told patients maybe a year and a half, because they all have their way of hiding themselves, keeping themselves cloaked within the tissue. And as you start to kill them off, you may be discouraged when you start to feel the taste of the metals in the mouth or the bitter, but as a practitioner, you go, we're getting somewhere. And we're very thankful we're getting somewhere. And that's why we're like, let us know where you're going to be at, because as the new wave of parasites come in, Dr. Moore's right. You're never necessarily going to get rid of all parasites or virus. We just want to get your body to the point where you feel normal, not the yin or the yang, not too excessive or not too below normal, but in that nice medium. And anything that pulls you out of that nice balance, we know it's overgrowing. So that's what we do. We live in balance. We adapt all day. And I'm going to take that bitter taste. I'm sorry. That was just great, man. But I'm telling you, when you have 6 months to 8 months, I find it a success when a person has severe parasitic activity in the body. In 8 to 12 months, they start to feel like my brain's back to normal. And the hardest part is when we see a patient, like our heart goes out to all of you that go through something. You're like, I don't feel like I'm in my right mind right now. And we're like, we know you won't feel that way when there's metals and mold and such floating around, but it can get better. It can get better.
It can, and it will, and just keep fighting, keep pushing. There is a way.
Yes, sir.
There's a will, there's a way. I've got some people that are incredible. I mean, horrible depression, anxiety, but they keep fighting. So just keep it up. I've seen that heal. I know you have too.
Yeah. Yeah. Every time when they find, like, guys, when they have so much major depression, I think it's encouraging to the patient when they see themselves where they'll have so many good days and they'll have more bad days. But I always say your better days will outnumber your bad days in a few. And remember, guys, when you're detoxifying, when Dr. Moore and I are putting you on, you're going through your own parasitic cleansing, when your liver, your gallbladder is actually trying to cleanse your blood of all these toxins that you're pushing through it. In Chinese medicine, anytime anybody comes into me, Dr. Moore, they'll say, hey, I feel depressed. I feel like I'm overwhelmed, too many decisions. That's 101 Chinese medicine, liver, gallbladder toxicity. So we know you're overworking the gallbladder and liver, which means we got to keep that flushed a bit. And if that's the case, if they get backed up, we have to be careful because it backs the chi up into the heart and the pericardium, the small intestine, which means you're going to have a fluctuation of emotions. So if you're depressed, if you feel lost and vulnerable, those are all heart, really warm pericardium emotions. So when you start to get accentuated in depression, we don't want to see you go through it. But that is just telling me that your liver and gallbladder are pushing stuff out. So when they say, oh, I felt so vulnerable, so lost, I didn't know where I was going, it's like, this stuff's coming out. This is the path.
Oh yeah. And then I'm like, also increase your liver support. Let's talk about castor oil packs, coffee enemas, supports, TUDCA. Let's hope you get through that.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Castor packs.
Right.
Love it, man. Love it.
So, all right. Parasites have 1,000 mechanisms, it seems like, to hide. Like you've talked about them being stealthy and different types of cycles. What about biofilms? How is it that they survive so well in this?
Oh, guys, biofilms are things that many holistic healthcare practitioners out there, if you guys visit one or you listen to Dr. Moore and his talks, biofilms can be very common. If you had an infection, a parasitic infection, a mold infection, fungal, even bacterial for quite a bit of time, a lot of times these infections will grow. It's a polysaccharide. So they'll create a polysaccharide, and it's a compound. Sometimes they'll pull an alginate, which is a polysaccharide, and they'll mix it with the calcium that's in your body. So many times the parasites will go in there with bacteria. They'll find a group of bacteria. They'll find other infections where these compounds are being made, and it's like an apartment complex. So they literally have these biofilms. You know the plaque on your teeth? That's a biofilm. So they go in there and they can eat their biofilm. So they don't have to leave their house. They can stay in the biofilm along the sides of your walls of your colon. And if you eat food, they can jump right out and go get the food, go back in. They don't have to leave far. So they will survive if they have enough polysaccharides. So if you have a diet that's high in carbs or high in starches, they have plenty of fuel to go and keep their biofilms active. So the problem is, like, when you guys are working on your own parasites, don't be discouraged, because as you and I know, Dr. Moore, like when you kill them off like 6 months, sometimes be like, I feel great, feeling good. All of a sudden they come back and you go, man, I had 2 weeks, like really bad. Well, what happened is your body has to degrade the biofilms. And I do like different things. We like mimosa pudica. We like different things, of biotoxin binders that will go and clean and scrub the walls out. The hard part is that when they do get scrubbed off, sometimes that biofilm and some of the cells that come from it, the toxins will jump into your bloodstream pretty quickly because you're scrubbing them out. But that's how they'll survive. They'll do that. They'll insist. In some forms of parasites use biofilm or encysting themselves, which means they will go into your tissue, create a big hard wall around themselves, and live in your tissue. And some parasites can live in the tissue for 5 to 7 years. That's just common knowledge. And so people say, well, I was good. I'm like, that's why at many times when a patient comes into us, they were like, no, I still find indication like we got to push a little bit harder. And they're like, why? It's like, because I don't want that cyst to be living in there in 5 or 7 years, something comes up. Like, what if lunar cycles created this full? Like, because people, their bodies freak out when there's different moon phases. So we try to find every angle to like make sure they're not hiding, and they can hide in the tissue. But those are some of the simple ways they do. hide. Yeah.
Exactly. I use the things that you were talking about. I use some BFB from Supreme Biofilm Buster.
Yep. It's so good, man. Like when you rub it on the little areas or find the areas around the acupuncture points to roll on. And I mean, guys, we're going to be a little graphic, but like individual will call me the next day and say, hey, I just had foam when I had my bowel movement, just complete foam. And I'm like, yeah, or had small pellets come out, and I'm like, yeah, just from an oil. And you think just from an oil, but man, that biotoxin binder from Cellcore, man, I started using that like a few weeks ago because I didn't really know that you had it. And then Dr. Lindsley had told me about it. I started putting people on. I was like, what in the world, man? People started flushing stuff out. It was fantastic. Check it out. Biotoxin binder, guys. It's great.
Tell you what, you want to do something fun. Be careful with giving this to them. Maybe do it yourself first. Tudka is a great liver gallbladder. It increases bile salts. You take a bunch of Tudka, all of a sudden comes a flood of liver flukes. You got a bunch of like tomato skin things coming out, and you're like, I haven't ate tomato skin in a while. It's not a tomato season. Where are the things coming from?
I'm going to do
liver fluke.
Dude, we had patients, like, I know you have had them too, but any of you out there that have been overseas, a lot of patients have come in that do a lot of overseas work or missionaries, and they will tell me that when we put them on a certain protocol, like some Supreme Nutrition, I'm going to try the Tudka, but like they'll release flukes, and they'll say, I see these small slivers that look red, and they're like 30 or 40 of them, and they just manifest, and they grow quick. Oh, so yeah. I'm going to try the Tudka. That's going to be good next time with the fluke patient.
There, it's not a killer, it's a cleaner, but man, it is an incredible one. Some other fun things that we get. I had a lady come in, and I did a BFB Tudka AP from Byron White kind of flush.
Oh yeah.
And she goes, are there any parasites that look like fish? She's like, I let out a fish. And I just kind of looked at her and I was like, fish, huh? I've actually seen a picture of one that was it looked like a crawdad. It had like everything, straight up crawdad out of a person.
Yeah, you know what? Like some of the malarial parasites look like they have little claws. I've seen that before, but that would freak me out. But I mean, in a positive way, it'd be great. Because guys, you want to hear like the story? I'm going to tell you guys this, but I believe one of my patients, she's told me to tell it. So guys, follow along. So one of my patients, her husband and family has a backdrop that she was getting a bit bipolar. So I don't say this out of disrespect or making light of it. She was getting a bipolar. She's feeling that way. Well, it takes a turn. We found out that she had high amounts of parasites, and she knew it. Now, we found, like, every time I examined her, I kept finding toxicity around the acupuncture points of the top of the chest near her left side. So she had informed me that she had a breast implant. So I kept finding these signals around that area. And she goes, do you think I need to go get this checked out? I said, I would go get this checked out because I was cleaning out parasites so much. And she said, I had all the symptoms since I was 18, right when she got the breast implant. So I'm not talking about breast implants or trying to, talk down anybody that has them or scare anybody. But she went and got it checked out, and sure enough, it busted. So this is like a backdrop to the story. And then she got the breast implant removed. And when she pulled out, they took a picture. It looked like a shower curtain that had molded over. And it looked like complete mold. The other side was full. The other side had completely mold. And she was feeling a lot better. Well, she started flushing more parasites because they had nothing to live off. They were starting to flush out more and more. And so her family's kind of thought like, well, you're going mental. You're going crazy. And you and I know, I'm like, no, they got parasites all in them.
Yeah.
So I don't recommend anybody doing this. She was so tired of it. She took a stool sample to her vet, and to prove wrong, the vet was like, oh yeah, well, your dog, it has lots of tapeworms. She goes, ha, fooled you. That was mine. She had taken her own stool sample to the vet, and it proved that she had tapeworms. But from that point on, I was like, I mean, I didn't laugh that she had it, but she'd known, and she'd been and taken ivermectin and albendazole, different types of compounds that certain clinics around the country will get for parasites. And they're used for animals, but they use them in other countries like India, third world countries, to help clear stuff off. All that to say is when you hear stories, we hear stories, but the greatest effect is this. This is the backdrop for her. She's like, I can't think clearly. And I kept finding after she had the surgery, got the stuff flushed out, thyroid kept showing up, brother. Thyroid. And I thought, if I were to test, I was like, well, her thyroid levels were still level, And then I sent her to my medical doctor. I said, there's something going on up here. Can you check? Parathyroid.
Ah.
I didn't check the parathyroid. She had a parathyroid. It had overgrown because of all the stress, all that toxicity. That's my opinion. And she had had surgery to get some of it removed because she had all the classic symptoms of parathyroid toxicity. And that was all 18 years old. And I'm like, thankfully, like that stuff's going to keep now, like her brain, pretty chill now. Like she's out of it. And I'm just saying, all from finding parasites from a veterinarian visit.
I hear that quite often, honestly, that vets tend to be a little bit more open and into parasites or into diagnosing infections a lot more maybe their medical counterparts. Well, you've talked about this several times, the symbiosis, a little bit of all the organisms creating their biofilms. So with different types of infections, is there a symbiosis between, say, parasites and Lyme or parasites and viruses?
I would like to ask your opinion too. I think that many times what I found is that when I start to kill off parasites, sometimes Lyme, not sometimes, many times Lyme or a spirochete will show up after it. And it's only because there's a weakened area within the body. And so other infections will go to it. But I will find that when you pop open parasites, sometimes, many times viruses will show up. I mean, and sometimes bacteria, SIBO will show up, of course. And I will find a lot of viruses. So when I clear off a lot of parasites, as a general rule, guys, I will go in and check Epstein-Barr virus, cytomegalovirus, CMV, or even indications of old immunizations, if there's any type of relationship there. But I'm saying like usually Epstein-Barr, cytomegalovirus, and heavily like herpes type viruses. Like, and you also find things like smallpox or chickenpox. Now, to the point where I had a patient that had parasites and H. pylori that was in the gut, cleaned those out, and she came in, man, and she kept having tingling down her face and her jaw. And it did not show. And I kept thinking, you have the classic signs of shingles. And I was like, I could not find it. I kept checking time. Finally, she goes, yeah, this area here. And we finally got the rest of the parasite and the H. pylori killed off, like from my indications. So I thought, you know what, if this doesn't get better, we need to get a blood test to see if it's all gone. And sure enough, she texted me, she goes, hey, does this look like, what is this? Shingles that come up. Like when you kill off things, other things can pop open. Yeah. And they say viruses are so small, guys, that they can infect bacteria and they can infect parasites. So if they can live off a parasite or bacteria, many times they'll infiltrate. And so when you kill off the parasite, it may let go of the virus and allow it to flood out too. So you'll find them living symbiotically together a lot of times.
I say if you look up strongyloides, it is very commonly associated with HHV6.
Oh.
Those come together usually. And
I didn't know that. Yeah.
The Th1, Th2 immune systems, parasites trigger one side, viruses trigger the other side. So if your parasitic level is too high and you're just treating parasites, then you let viruses kind of run rampant.
Oh my word.
So
yes.
If you can figure out where to start and manage that situation, you tend to have a lot better success. But, you know, everything you were saying correlates right with that. What else did we say? And you said Lyme disease. So Lyme disease will live inside of parasites. So if you try to treat Lyme first, stop treating Lyme, come back and either don't treat parasites or even treat them later. Oftentimes the bacteria will come back out of the parasite, reinfect the body. And then you've either, you're either treating this or not treating this at all. So then you have this carousel of, I feel better from Lyme because I took the antibiotics. I feel worse because I didn't get rid of the parasites. I feel better because I did it again. And it just goes over and over and over again. So I definitely see that symbiosis there. And
I do too. It's like whenever that person has high amounts of parasites, think about it, guys. The Lyme in itself is going to find, or any type of virus is going to find any host that will actually help its survival. So parasites are probably one of the biggest type of microbes. So they'll go in, and that is a hard thing whenever you start to kill off parasites, because if an individual feels like they're doing really well, and many of you out there probably think that, I'm doing well, and all of a sudden they feel sick. And then we'll find indications of virus or bacteria, and they're like, well, why didn't that show up at the very beginning? Remember, either they pop open, they're coming out, and your body can only handle so much at one time. So a lot of times you're thinking, why didn't it give me an indication that the virus or bacteria were inside the parasite? Remember, the resonance or the frequency of those things are inside of a parasite. They're stuffed in there. They're laying dormant. They're feeding off the infection. So we're not saying this to be scary, We're just saying that we're giving the explanations. Why is it that, I feel, bad after 3 months of treatments when I was feeling so good? It will get better. It does. It's just that we have to kill Lyme, a reinfection, or kill a virus. But they all work together. When one robber gets caught, another one takes its place. So you have to like manage it. And I love that when you talked about the TH1, TH2, man. I'm going to read on that, bro. Thank you.
Yeah.
So much.
Some other pieces of the puzzle that come up when I deal with Lyme or with parasites, I tend to think if I didn't have any tools at my disposal and I was just saying, let's just clear as much as we can clear.
Mm-hmm.
The concept that I go by is big to small, because if I get rid of the parasite, then next comes the bacteria, and then the mycoplasma, and then the virus. Mm-hmm. And as I'm going through that journey, you're already going to be detoxing metals and molds and radiations and plastics. And then at the very end, after I get rid of the organisms, and not rid of, but reduced, that's when I go after the toxins, so that I have the opportunity to, these guys are making more toxins. If you've already gotten out of the mold, out of the metal, heavy metal water, and eating better, getting away from the plastic, then you're not getting more toxins in. So I can address these things that are hurting us and making more toxin. And then I can go over here with the stuff that's more stagnant and then get rid of it. And then we should be pretty good. I mean, we might have to go back in and tune some things up, and good lasts so long because we still live in our environment. So to everybody listening to this, it doesn't mean you're done forever. That means, like, for myself, I tend to do a little cleanse here every 6 months, every 12 months, just to make sure I stay well. So it's not a forever. Make sure you pay attention and keep healing yourself forever.
That is. And health, guys, is that journey. When patients come in and ask us, I'm like, health is a journey, to the point where people say, well, can I ever get rid of it to where I go back to normal? And when you think about how much your body is encountering a parasite when you eat food, and we're going to get parasites through our food, it's just going to be what happens. But if you have your immune system strong enough to actually kill those things off as they enter your body, or have the amount of acids in your stomach to eat up the parasite or the eggs that get into your food or your milk or your dairy, that's the goal, is to get your immune system very high functioning to where you can do that. But the way to do that is keep rechecking, keep your vitamins and your minerals up, your supplementation, do a cleanse. That's why we recommend those things. It's like, why do you feel it more? Why do we feel it more as we get older? Like, am I just getting old? I'm like, Dr. Moore and I, and you guys out there probably study things such as liver detox or methylation or the Krebs cycle. When we get older, we don't make as many stem cells. When we get older, our livers may not work as efficiently, because when you're young, your body creates tons of chi, like tons of electricity. And you may have the capacity because you still are growing through stem cells. You got it going. But once you get past 30 or 35, body says, I need a little help. So I encourage my patients, remember, it's the journey. You're going to have to live a healthy life. Don't just think it's just, I'm going to do a real quick detox and get rid of Lyme. I'm like, no, your body is giving you the indication that you may have a genetic variant, genetic issues that doesn't allow you to fight off an infection. Encourage the body, strengthen the body, get it rolling. And I'm telling you, like, you're going to be the people that live long, long, long lives, wherein people that, my shoulder is just getting out of whack. It's just an old decrepit shoulder. I'm like, no, you got Lyme infection in there. Let's get it out. Those are the differences. So we're encouraging you. Yes.
Well, all right. So for everybody's favorite part of all these talks, we're getting up to that 50-minute mark. What are your favorite remedies, herbs, spices, or for some of your expertise, teas that you use for parasite type remedies?
Man, I have to follow you, Dr. Lindsley, and Dr. Watts. I do love when we talk about scrubbing. Mimosa pudica is one thing that I'll start off with. I use a lot of different Chinese herbs, but I do use a lot of Ayurvedic. So I'll use a lot of neem powder. I'll use oregano leaf. I'll use wormwood. So guys, why does wormwood? Don't use them all at the same time. These are my examples. I love neem. I love Chinese coptis. Chinese coptis is a really good flower powder that goes in and can kill a lot of infection. I love noni powder. I love noni capsules. And I love wormwood, sweet anise, or artemisia. Artemisia is a good one. And black walnut. Some of those are my favorite because they seem to like cover a whole bunch of ground. But whenever I use a combination of those, they have Cellcore has great parasite cleansing products, and I'm telling you what, they do well, or microbe formulas. I find that Supreme Nutrition Products does really well. But the top, I would say for me, when we talk about teas, like I use like oregano, like quite a bit on those. And I use neem powder, those two. So I'm not saying that one works. Oh, and this too, with teas, rosemary tea. People don't want to drink it, but rosemary will kill parasites off really well. So I'll use rosemary capsules too.
What about cistus tea? Do you have any experience?
You know what? I've only used cistus, not because it didn't, I just don't use it a lot because I need to start researching. I've had patients bring cistus tea in the last 2 years, and it did clear the signals out. So they would say, especially the ones that come from missionary fields, they would drink that and they would say they would keep flushed out to the point where they have red streaks across their stomach because they were getting rid of like flukes and like old rickettsia. But no, that's great cistus tea. Yeah.
All right. So as far as teas, that was one of the ones that I know about. I don't use a lot of tea in my practice just because I don't know. I use a lot of herbs, a lot of pills, a lot of tinctures, a lot of bad tasting tinctures. Oh man. Like people calling, do you know this tastes bad? Yes, pretty much. If it tastes good, it's not good for you.
Yep. And I always say like, they always say like, man, when I get it, I almost gag. And I said, well, the parasites gag too. So you need to take it. All right. And I'm like, all herbs are irritants. If they irritate you, they're going to irritate the microbe. So let's take it. So good.
Funny. My mom, when I was young, she gave me, what'd she give me? Which, by the way, Dr. Motley's worked on my mom before.
Oh,
and she absolutely loves you, still talks about you. But when I was a kid, and we weren't the most natural family, my mom did her best, but we weren't the most natural family. I'd get a sore throat. She would give me straight oregano drops in my mouth.
Straight, and it burned your mouth?
If you've never done that, you don't understand this comment. But if you have done this, you understand it. I used to, like, at 10 years old, I'm like, Mom, can I have some oregano? Like, so bad. And my thought process as a 10-year-old is, it's so bad and burns so much.
Yeah, that's right.
It has to be scaring away the bacteria.
Even at 10 years old, you knew it was scaring out the bacteria and all the stuff in your throat. That's right. But things burn so good, right? When you take those things, like old remedies. My mom used to, whenever we have really bad stomach aches or something, she would take this weird vegetable. It's called it's a Korean vegetable. It almost looks like a small tomato, and she would soak them. And it didn't taste horrible, but it didn't taste great. You know, when you're young, you want something kind of sweet. And she'd steep it for like a whole day, and she'd make us drink it. But I remember, like, when you did it, the warmest, great feeling would stimulate the stomach and the spleen and just get the warmth. And it was like, you know, a day or two of drinking that, I was like, everything went away. It's great. But it didn't burn my mouth like oregano when people say, your mom's great. Oh man. Those are herbs and spices. Yeah, definitely.
Definitely return that favor. She was not feeling well one day. I'm like, well, Mom, we can get some oregano. I got some here in the office. So here you go. She was just, it's
your turn now.
Oh, and I was like, yeah, you did that to me as a kid.
Oh man, I pay my mom back too. Like my mom now, whenever she has something to stomach, I'll give her some tinctures, and she just looks at me in a little Korean lady. She's like, that's terrible. And I'm like, yeah, like, you know, you got to start drinking this stuff too. Cause I just load her up with stuff. Yeah. It's fun, man. So good.
All right. Well, do you mind if we take a few questions for all the people watching?
Sure. Yeah, that'd be great.
All right. So this will be what we're ending with, guys. So we're going to go through a few questions here. I believe there's like 21 plus messages. So we're going to grab a few. If you don't get an answer from us, how do they reach you?
Yes, you guys can. The best way, guys, is not to say I want you to go on my Facebook or Instagram. A lot of times people go to Instagram. It's Dr. Motley spelled out, at Dr. Motley on Instagram and Dr. Motley on Facebook. You can also email me at drmottleydc@gmail.com, drmottleydc@gmail.com. I'm more prone to my assistant can give me those questions, but sometimes on Facebook or more on Instagram, I try to get back to my messages every week. So those are really good ways. And you don't have to follow. I'm just saying, if you send me something, maybe I can get back to them. Because we get a lot of questions. I try my best, guys, and we love to answer questions. I do try my best, but it's hard to do it when you're treating people in the day too. So, but that's how you can reach me, guys. So check me out, and we got a lot of free info out there. But we're always here to help. We're both here to help. Yeah.
All right. Well, let's buzz through a couple of questions. Yeah. So, does belly button pain come from parasites?
Not all the time. I think that belly button pain, if you have it around that central area, if it's around this conception vessel 8, that is a common sign though. like it can be around the CVA or the area near the small intestine points that we would test. If you have belly button pain per se, I would also see if you have truly an itching nose or an itching bottom. If you have both of those with the belly button having pain, then I would suspect parasites. If your belly button is chronically injured or painful, I have often found that you could have an infection around the kidneys, or you could have it in the lower bowel. So it could be either one of those, but it could be an indication of parasites. So I always tell patients, if that area hurts, go over. There's just 2 points. Research this. Stomach 25 on acupuncture. You can find it on Google. They're right beside the belly button. Press in. If those hurt, then it means your large intestine's involved. So you could have parasites, or you can have a bacterial infection.
All right. Great info. All right. So is it possible to do a parasite cleanse without being tested as a precaution? If so, what's your favorite?
The parasite test?
No, if you don't have a parasite test, you just want to do a precautionary cleanse.
Oh, man. Well, I would say the protocol that I've seen work well has been from Cellcore's protocol. Maybe they want me. I'm not trying to promote them, guys. I don't get paid from them. I'm not saying that, but I have found that they have a good protocol. Also, too, a good liver cleanse that I've seen from a group called Metagenics. Metagenics has a small 15 or 30-day cleanse. Some people will do that to help cleanse out the liver, to gently start the process of trying to get the liver and the bowels to clean out. But I have seen that Cellcore works really well. For me personally, if you suspect parasites, I generally will find that wormwood, or if I do a black walnut, I will use those on a patient. But you have to find a primary healthcare or holistic healthcare professional that can actually dose you on those, because I don't want to just tell you to start taking them. You need somebody like Dr. Moore, somebody to like give you advice and say, hey, this is how much your body could take. So I hope that's not too general for you, but check out the protocols like cellcore.com. They have really good protocols, and they'll show you and they'll give you the good information on there. Everybody's unique, guys. Everybody's genetics different. Some people can take certain herbals and certain things better than others, but give them a shot. Check them out. Yeah.
Okay. So we have over and over and over the same kind of question, which it's the favorite, it looks like, which is, what is your parasite protocol? What's best for children? What parasite protocol should I start with? Which you just said Cellcore, so I'm just, putting out there.
Parasite protocol. Like I said, if you want a good general one, what's the one that I use? I'm not saying I don't use Cellcore, but many times for me, guys, what I do find commonly is if a patient comes with parasites, I usually go to like Nature's Pharmacy, that our friend Dr. Lindsley, he does quite a bit with Lyme disease. I will say that if you check out Nature's Pharmacy LLC, I will usually use Formula 2 and Formula 3. So why I do that is because those formulas have quite a bit of anti-parasitic, antibacterial, antifungal type herbals in them. Now, again, you do want to try to get advice of a holistic healthcare professional, but Formula 2 helps cleanse the liver of parasites, and Formula 3 is more for babesia. But I find if I work with those two at the beginning and start those patients on there, small drops, I'm not talking dropperfuls. I'm saying start with small drops, maybe 4 or 5 drops. I usually recommend 4 drops to start. That's my protocol. Start with that. And then I usually find an herbal or spice to go along with it, which could be the Chinese coptis or the neem powder or the noni. So I'll find a small combo there. But I never discount the amount of toxins that they could push off. So many times you could put somebody on NAC or Takasumi or a binder. That's what we need to do. Like some people do a charcoal or do the NAC. So you remember, you have 2 herbal formulas, maybe a spice, and then we'll do a binder. But on top of that, I always find something as well that will help increase their mitochondria, their energy. So I'll do something like Designs for Health mitochondrial NRG. And also check, even NutriWest has a good total mitochondria. So I'm not expecting you guys to remember all this, but turn on the mitochondria. And then I always make sure that they have enough minerals. Remember, your energy cycles live off minerals. So Cellcore has a really good mineral drop that they use, but I love Pure Encapsulations. They have a mineral 650, guys. So remember, turn on the energy, turn on the cells. That's what I try to do with the mitochondria and the minerals. Do a few killers and a binder. And those are usually my small group of that's my protocol. So if you guys want to know what I could do in the next week on this weekend is put it up on my storyline and try to hold it up on my storyline on Instagram, and I'll put that up there, like a small common one. But that's what I would normally recommend. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you. I got a question here. Any thoughts on vitiligo, parasite, virus, or bacteria?
Man, that's a good question. Everybody that I've seen with vitiligo, I'm not saying it's one. I know we both have seen people with vitiligo, and we get different types of readings on individuals or different types of signals. But I do find a lot of viral indicators on vitiligo. Parasite, definitely. I've had a mixture. Out of 10 patients that have had vitiligo, I would say maybe 6 had virus, 4 had parasites. I hope that doesn't sound discouraging because you're trying to find one avenue. But if you find out where your vitiligo is, this is really important. If the vitiligo is in an arm or on the side or on the hands or on the face, watch what pattern. If it's grown, you can look at the pattern, then find the acupuncture meridians that pattern is growing on, and you'll find out where the infections may reside. I always say with a patient with vitiligo, if it's on the hands or the inside of the elbows or outside, I'm like, well, that's pericardium or the heart. Increase and check the heart and see if you can increase the strength. And then I check for viruses first. That's the first thing I check for. And then I go to parasites because I will find that usually they will work in combo. So it's parasite virus for me.
Great information. Love it. I tend to think parasite also as one of mine. Didn't know about the acupuncture meridian. That's awesome stuff there.
Yeah. It's good stuff, man.
I love it. And then sometimes I see a little bit of fungus kind of going along with it too.
Yeah, that's a great
question, but throwing that in there.
Yep. And I would always recommend you, like, also too, if you ever had indications of like where the acupuncture meridian's at, guys, if you find that, go back in your history. Let's say it was on the large intestine meridian, like if you have chronic large intestine issues, and that'll give you a lot of indication like where those infections reside. Yeah.
Well, I love it. I think we're going to call it a night. It has been 61 minutes, I believe. It's been over 61. An hour. And I'm so thankful for you, man, as a mentor, as a friend, and for doing this.
Oh, thank you, my brother. Thank you.
All the information that you're giving us. It's incredible. Check him out on his Instagram. I follow him. My girlfriend follows him. Come in an interview right now because she follows you. She wants to know about all the Enneagram and all that stuff. So one day she's going to call you and just be like, can I have 5 minutes?
Yeah, of the Enneagram. Yeah, definitely. We've been doing a lot of work on that in the Zodiac and Zodiac Health. Yeah, it's been really fun. I'm going to put out some extra stuff, but guys, I'll probably write more on the Enneagram later, but it's been really fun. So yeah, that'd be good. That'd be a good combo to have too. So
we definitely, man. So thanks for coming on here. Thanks for talking with me. I hope I get to see you in January at that conference.
I'll be there, man. Thank you, brother. Appreciate it. Thanks, guys. Have a good one.